everybody, and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not News, your favorite podcast about fake news. I'm Beth.
And I'm Kelly.
Hey, Kelly, how's it going tonight?
It's going okay. I have to say, it's been a really busy week, but I'm glad to be doing this with you.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Well, what's going on in the news? Anything happening?
I don't think so. I mean, it's been a really slow couple of weeks.
Yeah, right?
I don't think I've heard anything at all happening.
I know. It's like we're not in a nuclear war with North Korea.
No, that's not happening. You know, I think that for the most part, the Earth is still spinning on its axis like it's supposed to be. But oh yeah, that's right. Fucking Justice Kennedy has decided to resign.
Oh, that's right. All of our rights are going to go away again.
Bye. I guess it was nice for like 10 years to be a woman.
Hey, Trump has always said he wants to take us back to the 1950s, right?
Gross.
Yeah. Hey, I just had a thought. Tomorrow, so we're recording this on July 3rd, so tomorrow's 4th of July.
Yeah.
I hope our listeners actually hear this, because if North Korea was going to start a nuclear war with us, tomorrow would be the day.
Well, you know, they did just catch them really vamping up that nuclear program or nuclear system in North Korea. You know, after he said, oh, no, I definitely won't do that, which is kind of funny because the last time he said he wouldn't do it, he also did it. And the time before that his dad said he wouldn't do it, they definitely did it. And the time before that, and the time before that, and the time before that. So, I mean, it's really shocking that he didn't keep the promise that he wasn't going to do this.
So when I say that tomorrow, 4th of July, we might get attacked, is that maybe starting like a liberal conspiracy theory about news?
I don't know. Have you thought about who's paying for this nuclear attack? Have you thought about who's instigated it? Has it been instigated by someone on the right, someone who's going to make a lot of money off of it?
I don't know.
Are there any bankers involved?
I just don't know how to do this. Okay.
We should probably consult the experts.
We should, because there are some conspiracy theories already going around about the retirement of Justice Kennedy. So I say we take this episode and dive into the Supreme Court. And even though there's only two of us, we can make a decision.
We can. I bet it'll be 2-0. Let's hope. Fingers crossed.
I bet it will be. I bet it will be. So who is Justice Kennedy? Let's start there.
So Justice Kennedy was one of the 9 Supremes. I like that because we've been watching Michelle Wolf's new show, and she calls the Supreme Court the Supremes. And I feel like that gives it exactly the proper respect that they have been deserving lately, because F them. So he was sworn into office in 1988. One of the things that I learned when I was researching him is that he's been called this swing vote, but it turns out when I started doing any research at all that he's only been the swing vote since 2005. So of his 30 years in the court, he has been the swing vote for about 13 years, because that's when Sandra Day O'Connor retired. Right. And she used to be considered the swing vote, even though she was more conservative.
What? Just
I know.
a woman? She's not a liberal?
Crazy, right?
I know.
So one thing that I did, I of course, I'd search Wikipedia, because that's where you go. And it lists all this information about his Supreme Court tenure. And one of the things it talks about is on the Roberts Court. So when Justice Roberts was the head of the Supreme Court, Kennedy often decided the outcome of a case. And from 2008 to 2009, he was in the majority 92% of the time. So not really kind of swingish there, right, if he's voting with the majority. So in 23 of the decisions in which the justices split 5-4, Kennedy was in the majority in all but 5. So just because you don't always know where he's going to lie doesn't make him a swing voter. And honestly, it seems like the things that he was most interested in were things like freedom of speech. He was very interested in. Just as a point of reference, please remember that he definitely cited for Citizens United, because he he is still conservative.
Yes.
And,
he
but he did
for gay marriage though. And
yes, he was.
He upheld Roe versus Wade time and time again.
Yes. And he became less conservative throughout his tenure, is what I did read, is that in the beginning, he was much more stringent on things like the death penalty. But as he went on, he became more lenient on some of those stances. Like, for instance, intellectual disabilities, people who experience intellectual disabilities, he did not agree that they should receive the death penalty, as well as juveniles, which it's crazy to me that there's even been cases where juveniles receive the death penalty. But hey.
Okay. I mean, sometimes I want to kill my kids, but not seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that would just be punishment for you.
Right.
Some days I just wonder if my son's going to make it out alive on his own.
I posted today things I never thought I would say. We have to leave in 15 minutes. You cannot eat your cereal with chopsticks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to tell my son today that he couldn't bring a 6-foot walking stick into the grocery store. I was like, I just don't think they're going to want you to do that. So no.
Well, here's what happened. So Anthony Kennedy announced his retirement, and right away, some conspiracy theories started. And we do have to remember what Dr. Jolie taught us, is that when a big event happens, there has to be an equally big explanation for it. And I think that with a Supreme Court judge retiring who was basically holding abortion rights and gay marriage rights by a thread in our country, that's a really big thing. And so people started looking for the big reason that it happened. So we have a Snopes article here. It says, did Anthony Kennedy resign from the Supreme Court to protect his son? The 81-year-old justice's resignation announcement triggered a spate of conspiracy posts focused on his son's connections to Donald Trump and the Deutsche Bank. So the claim was that he suddenly resigned from the Supreme Court as part of a deal to shield his son from ongoing Russia investigations. Ooh, what's going on here? Okay, so Snopes has labeled this as unproven. So basically at this point, there's not a lot of information out there. It's just more of a, hey, what about this kind of thing? There's nothing to really prove it or unprove it. So they've just marked it as unproven. So they say here, whenever a Supreme Court leaves the bench through retirement or death, it is a significant political event. And it provides the incumbent president with the opportunity to nominate a successor who is ideologically congruent with the party in power, and in most cases will remain on the bench for decades to come. I think if Trump could, he would probably nominate like a 20-year-old just to have them on forever.
He'd probably nominate Ivanka.
Yes.
Honey, you're very fair. I think you know how to do
Barron's
this.
Younger, though.
Let's put you in there.
What's younger.
That's true. He's not quite old enough. Although I will say this, Tiffany is in law school, but he doesn't talk to her.
So it says, Justice Kennedy has been a critical swing vote on the sharply polarized court for nearly 3 decades as he embraced liberal views on gay rights, abortion, and the death penalty, but helped conservatives trim voting rights, block gun control measures, and unleash campaign spending by corporations. His replacement by a conservative judge, something Mr. Trump has vowed to his supporters, would imperil a variety of landmark Supreme Court precedents on social issues where Justice Kennedy frequently sided with his liberal colleagues, particularly on abortion. So right away, this guy, Proud Resistor, at Proud Resistor on Twitter, Ryan Knight, posted this tweet that said Deutsche Bank has loaned Donald Trump over $2.5 billion since 1998. Deutsche Bank was fined $630 million for a $10 billion Russian money laundering scheme in 2017. And retiring Justice Anthony Kennedy's son was Trump's banker at Deutsche Bank. That's way too many coincidences. And then Ben David Grabanowski said, I can't believe the son of a Supreme Court justice loaned Trump $1 billion and no one reported on it before now. We're drowning in corruption. It's so crazy, it feels made up. And there was a meme that said, so to recap, healthy lifetime appointee Justice Kennedy randomly steps down days before a stunning NYT report linking him, his financier son, and Russian-connected Deutsche Bank to Trump and a $1 billion loan deal that no one in any party finds as any fishy at all. Hello, anyone. So the conspiracy theory was a little bit hazy, but most of it's just saying like, hey, this is really weird that Justice Kennedy's son was Trump's personal banker and loaned him $1 billion. And somebody else said, Justice Kennedy was not planning to resign next term. We know because he had already appointed clerks for that term. He suddenly resigned because his son, who worked for Deutsche Bank, indicated in the EU for being a conduit for money laundering for Russian oligarchs. He resigned because his son's client had been Donald Trump, for whom he had arranged up to $1 billion in loans. These funds were likely monies originating from Russian oligarchs connected to Putin, being laundered through the bank with the knowledge of Kennedy's son. In other words, Kennedy's son could be ensnared in the Mueller investigation, perhaps vulnerable to indictment himself. In this eventuality, you can be certain that there will be appeals to the Supreme Court to dissipate the threat posed by the investigation. As the father of the potential target of the investigation, Kennedy would be forced to recuse himself, leaving his son's fate to a split court. He knows that whomever Trump brings to the court will come with the intention of working to mitigate the effects of the certain revelations to come. This would imply that the administration knows that something is going to break in the investigation and soon. It also puts all of Kennedy's judicial decision relating to Trump under a dark cloud of conflict of interest. Wow. That is a lot of speculation.
It is a lot of speculation, and it's not a lot of factual. Like, there's some facts there, but it is very much it's going to almost a Glenn Beck version of, and let's not do that. Don't get all Glenn Beck on us, okay? Don't back this up. We need to make sure that we're not becoming Glenn Beck in this. There's so much hazy information there. First of all, there's no information out there that the junior Kennedy, not that he's a junior, but Justin Kennedy. It's such a weird, because his father is Justice and he's Justin. It's terrible. But anyway, so the younger Kennedy, everything I read said that he was gone before all of that money laundering with Russians even started. So he didn't have any knowledge of that. There is Stephanie Huell.
So let me read this to you really quick, because this is from the Snopes article. It says little hard evidence suggests that the Kennedy rumors are more than political conspiracy-driven speculation. Justin Kennedy left Deutsche Bank before the money laundering activity referenced above took place, and some sources have asserted that Justin Kennedy had little or no involvement with Trump's Deutsche Bank dealings. So then they talk about MSNBC host Stephanie Ruhle, who worked for 8 years at Deutsche Bank before joining the news network, cautioned about reaching conclusions because there are multiple parts of the bank that can easily get confused and lumped together. And she said basically there's multiple sides of the bank, specifically the private bank, and that's not where Mr. Kennedy worked, but that's who was lending to Trump. So it's basically like not even the same part of the bank was doing the lending that this guy. He worked as part of the real estate team, but not part of the private bank business. So
right. And this was when Deutsche Bank, a lot of people are making a big deal out of no one wanted to touch Trump. None of these banks wanted to. But what they're talking about is they're talking about American banks. And there's a Financial Times article from 2017 called Donald Trump's debt to Deutsche Bank. And in that, they mention briefly that Kennedy was a trader who arrived from Goldman to become one of Mr. Trump's most trusted associates over a 12-year spell at Deutsche. However, of course, that has been disputed by the MSNBC host, Stephanie Ruhle. I tend to want to be on her side. She's not, from what I understand, she's pretty trustworthy. She's a finance-based person. I did look into her a little bit. She tends to fall more liberal, more Democrat. It seems like if this was a real thing, she would have more knowledge about it than, say, what's that guy? Proud Resistor? Yeah. I mean, it just seems like someone who worked in the same company with him for 8 years would maybe know a little bit more. And, I can't say where Financial Times sourced all this information. Kennedy was mentioned once in the article, he was mentioned twice, once just as being called this trusted associate. And then in another time, they just mentioned that he they could not reach him for comment. So to me, I'm like, well, you didn't really verify that with the person that you're talking about. So I'm not going to take this as hard, stone cold facts, simply because you mentioned him in an article. And that's the article that that guy was pulling from. And again, it just seems like he was gone before the Russian probe or the Russian money laundering started. So the Russian probe wouldn't affect him. And then on top of that, it sounds like even if his company was involved with real estate, that seemed to be a push that Deutsche Bank was trying to do to get into the American market, because it was before the financial crisis. And it was when they were making like these big personal loans to real estate companies. And it wasn't just him. It wasn't just Trump. It was several different real estate investment people. It was all personal loans done with these point systems. And it was very interesting reading all of this. So I'll point to that, and I will actually try to point to the Twitter reply, because for some reason, the Financial Times article sometimes pops up for people and sometimes doesn't. So I'll try to post. There's a big screenshot of the entire article.
So the other part of the conspiracy theory is that basically the White House was pushing for Kennedy to retire for a reason, because they wanted the opening. They want to have another chance to appoint somebody. And according to the Snopes article, it says that, you know, there were no direct efforts to pressure or lobby Justice Kennedy to announce his resignation, but it's hardly the first time a president has done his best to create a court opening. In the past half century, presidents have repeatedly been dying to take advantage of timely vacancies, said Laura Kallman, a historian at the University of California, Santa Barbara. So do you want to walk us through this New York Times article that you found about that as well?
Okay, so the New York Times article, which came out just on the 28th, the day that he announced his resignation, does try to indicate that they did know each other, that when Trump first made his first address to Congress back in February of 2017, when he left, he spoke to Justice Kennedy and said to say hello to his son. So it does seem like they had some type of relationship, but whether or not that relationship was him being his personal banker it's kind of iffy to me, mostly because when I did some digging into the younger Kennedy, it does seem like he left Deutsche Bank and went to become like this real estate developer himself and has become a really big real estate person. So it is just as likely that they might know each other in that field, because that is what Trump does. In the
Snopes article, it actually says that he knows Donald Trump Jr. through the New York real estate circles.
Yeah, that makes sense. And probably if he's going that far, he probably knows all of them.
Right.
You know, he probably knows Gervonka as well.
Right. Right.
So, it's just, I think that real estate, like almost any industry, if you're that kind of conglomerate and you're that kind of leaning, that's a business that I think you probably, once you reach the upper echelon of you're working in millions and billions of dollars, there's probably only a certain number of people who are involved with that. You know, those $1 million listing type shows or whatever. There's probably not that many people who do that. So if you have, say, 200 people in New York State, that might be, you might just know all of them.
Yeah. And it looks like Trump has kind of focused on Justice Kennedy's clerks. He's appointed 3 of them. Yeah. And there's kind of part of this theory is that like the next vacancy could be filled by one of his old clerks, and that would be a feather in the cap for Kennedy. Neil Gorsuch actually clerked for Kennedy as well. So he already has one former clerk on the court. So there's kind of that speculation that it could just be that he knows that there's a high possibility that somebody that he knows and trusts is going to be appointed to take his seat. So,
yeah. And I mean, that seems fairly, I mean, not that I love the idea of having this conservative judge up there, but
right.
it seems fairly normal to me. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like if someone were to replace, you take the vice president if something happens to the president. You keep going in a line of succession. It's not as though they're just, I mean, my biggest fear is the fact that he's been handed a list that's been vetted through the Heritage Foundation, which is a crazy ass foundation that, the Murdoch family, I believe, is part of it. And definitely the, what is that awful, terrible family that did the Cambridge Analytica? Why am I blanking on their name? The Mercers.
Yeah. The Mercers and the Murdochs. Yeah.
I mean, they're all awful and they're all part of the Heritage Foundation. And that's just such a conservative think tank. And I'm sure that they've had a list for years.
Yeah.
Just waiting for whenever a Supreme Court justice drops dead or retires.
So I heard it was isn't it the Federalist Society that has the list of like that basically he's using for judges? That's what I heard. They're it's like a society of lawyers, and basically they pick all these like conservative judges to be nominees, and instead of doing the normal rules where a president would have a team vet judges and pick judges that could get through Senate confirmation, he literally just goes to this one group and is like, okay, give me the list. And they're like, okay, here's the most conservative ones that we could find.
It wouldn't be surprising to me if that's the case. I just feel like there's got to be multiple groups that have conferred upon him some sort of list. And I don't doubt that the Heritage Foundation has definitely provided him a list.
Well, he knows the best lawyers, the best judges. He knows the best.
Know. Can you imagine if?
Don't worry.
Imagine if Roy Cohn was still alive. He'd probably put that jackass right up on the Supreme Court. Imagine having that kind of gangster on the Supreme Court. Like that's. I can't even imagine what kind of. I mean, look at the picture. He has picked the worst lawyers for himself. I mean, he's gone from Roy Cohn to Michael Cohen to Rudy Giuliani. People, don't let him pick lawyers anymore. Oh my God. I mean, seriously, they're not letting him choose. They're giving him the list the same way that you tell your child, your toddler, okay, here's the things you can pick from for dinner, honey. That's what they're doing. And they're like, here's the list of people who could be Supreme Court nominees. And he doesn't even know any better. He's like, I'll take that one. Number 5 sounds good to me. Does it come with fries? Can I get a Diet Coke with that?
So let's talk about Kennedy and what he really was. Was he really that swing judge that everybody is saying? What do you think, Kelly?
So he wasn't. He was not, like we said before, he wasn't the moderate that they claim that he was. There's a really great article on 538 that's just called...
it's called Justice Kennedy Wasn't a Moderate. And that's the whole article. It just says that, and then it's done.
Yeah, that's just it. That's all it is.
That's just it. It's a picture of him. Yeah. Oh, wait, there's some more down here.
Yeah. So what they do have is they have a really interesting graphic, but they make it clear that even though he has this reputation as being a moderate because he did have more of a liberal view on gay rights, abortion, affirmative action, and some, not all, but some criminal justice issues like the death penalty that we were talking about before. Most of the time he voted, and especially when Justice Roberts was in place, he really voted right alongside the conservatives. And it wasn't until much later that he started falling more to a liberal side, which, that could be just in terms of
the cases that were coming up in the court.
Yeah, it could be that, as well as being able to look at the law and see what the law says. Mm-hmm. And following that precedent law. There's a lot of where he kept up with precedents, like that Roe versus Wade that he upheld. That was just a previous precedent. and they just upheld what was already in place.
So they have a really great infographic in here, and it shows you the percent that they voted conservative on all cases and then on close cases. Right. And it's striking that on all cases, he voted conservative 56.9% of the time, but on close cases, he voted conservative 71.3% of the time.
Right. And close cases, they're defining those as anything that's decided by a 5 justice majority. So anything that it doesn't have to be 5-4, but it has to be where, because sometimes they abstain. So it has to be a 5 majority on one side. So anything that's that number is where they're talking about here.
So, I mean, if you're voting conservative 71.3% of the time on close cases, I mean, that's not really leaning moderate.
No. And, one of the things that shocked me the most about that infographic was I knew Thomas was bad, but I actually thought Scalia had been the worst. And in this infographic, I learned that Thomas is actually the worst.
Nice.
Which is, it's really just not surprising. Like he flouts every rule. I remember way back when reading about him going to the Koch brothers dinner parties, and he does not give a shit. He knows that he's in there for life, and he doesn't care. And, Anita Hill, whatever, we didn't listen. We should have fucking listened. Right. I mean, that's an appointee. He was put in there by Clinton.
Right.
It's not like he was put in there by a Republican, and he's our most conservative judge. So,
crazy.
It always goes back to who, you never know quite what you're going to get, but I'm sure most of these people have been so thoroughly vetted by conservatives. And what I kept thinking about when I was doing all the research for this was Democratic presidents have tried to put in justices for at least since I've been alive. Because I've seen this happen a couple of times in my life, and I'm almost 40. So since I've been watching and paying attention, I feel like I've seen Democrats trying to put people in place who will be good at this job. Right. They're not looking for, I want the most liberal person to do this job. They're looking for people who would be good at doing this job. Whereas Republicans have been putting in people that they know are conservative. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why Kennedy was such a disappointment for so many conservatives, because they wanted him to be so on the other side of conservatives. And that's where we've seen the Supreme Court just going to this split where they're almost for a while there, they were a 4-4 split of liberal and conservative.
Right, because as judges, like what they're supposed to do is apply the law and interpret the law. It really shouldn't be. I mean, honestly, it's surprising to me that we can tell so easily if a judge is a liberal or a conservative, and really probably pretty easily if they were appointed by a Democrat or a Republican. And it's almost sad because the law shouldn't have that bias. It shouldn't be liberal or conservative. It should be what's fair and what's just. And now I'm a Libra, so that's like my thing. Like, I think everything should be fair and just.
Right.
So it's hard for me sometimes when it's not. But looking at this graph, like, that's kind of what strikes me a little bit is, what the fuck? Like, they should all be moderate. Like, honestly, like, you really shouldn't have a really super far right conservative or a really super far left liberal, because if that's clouding your decision when you're applying the law, then are you really applying that correctly? That's just kind of my little sidebar there. Okay.
No, I would totally agree with that. And, we can keep going back to the fact that Merrick Garland was absolutely denied the right that he should have been the justice. And this is absolutely ridiculous that, we held the Supreme Court basically for ransom while the fucking GOP did whatever they wanted. Right. It was unprecedented. It was super gross. It was disgusting. It was a lie, but they did it anyway and they didn't give a shit. And, I have to say, just from the bottom of my heart, whatever things I might have a problem with Obama, because I don't think he's a perfect person. I think he's human.
Right.
I think he made mistakes as president.
Sure.
But I do think all in all, he was a good president.
Yes.
I'd far rather have someone who went to law school picking a lawyer than someone who picks lawyers based on what they can get him out of trouble for.
Right.
Such as Roy Cohn, Michael Cohen, and Rudy Giuliani. None of those are good lawyers.
Well, and that's why the White House has a process for helping pick Supreme Court nominees. It's not like the president sits down with a flow chart and is like, I'll take this one. I mean, normally, that's probably what Trump does. But normally the presidents have a team of people helping them, because that's how you run a country, is you have help from the very best people.
Right.
And Trump doesn't.
He's got the best people.
He's got the best people.
He's got the best people.
If you need anything, a bagel, a steak, you just let me know. I've got the best people.
I've got the lawyers.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right.
So this is, I really like that 530 article. It's got some really good infographics in it. So I definitely encourage everybody to go take a look at it. So is this fake news?
So I have to be honest, it doesn't seem like this is fake news. I don't want to put it that far. It's not conspiracy worthy, but the official jury on whether or not it's fake news is still out.
Right.
So there's a lot of coincidences, but I kept thinking, does it take a conspiracy theory to figure out that an 82-year-old conservative wants to retire during a conservative administration?
Right.
So even though he held some liberal views, he still sided with conservatives so often that maybe he wanted to ensure that his replacement was firmly on the conservative side, since he's retiring before the elections November.
Right. And at this point, it's all unproven. So we don't have anything to say, yes, this is what happened, or no, it's what didn't happen. It's unproven. It's an opinion at best. And that's how I would take it, as an opinion. Don't go conspiracy theory on us, please.
Yeah.
Please, please, please.
So, Beth, why does it even matter?
So let's go back to Dr. Jolie for a second. So what he said about, like, when a big event happens, we have to explain it with an equally big event. So when your swing vote judge is retiring, that must mean that there's an evil, nefarious plan happening, which, to be fair, with this administration is possible. And I understand. But obviously, everybody is very, very concerned. Not everybody. People who are concerned about abortion rights being upheld are very, very concerned, because basically the feeling is that this is going to put Roe versus Wade on the chopping block. Also, gay marriage, LGBTQ rights, anything that was helping people actually have rights within our country, minority rights, civil rights cases, education rights, the Mueller investigation. I mean, police enforcement and immigration laws are all going to be closer to being rolled back than we've seen in decades if we have a very super conservative appointee on the Supreme Court.
Right.
So that is a very big event. So something nefarious must have happened to cause it, right?
I really, I know that this isn't, I know it's not true, but there's a part of me that's like, I want there to be one of those magazine letter ransom notes that was slipped under Justice Kennedy's door one evening that was like, we're going to kill your son if you don't retire. I want there to be some. I know there's not. And I'm not even getting out my red string.
Right.
Like, I have red string ready for Russia, but I don't have red string for this. I don't have enough red string in my database to do this and all the other things I need to do.
So I keep going back to a couple things. One is that not enough people believed what was going on with Russia last year or 2 years ago. Yeah. And that was a problem, is that we ignored the signs. Okay. But there were way more signs there, okay, than this. And I hear, I didn't fact check whether or not he had already staffed his clerks and therefore wasn't planning to retire. But
I couldn't figure out how to get that information. I did try, and there was I don't know where that person got that information from. Maybe they have an inside source.
Sure. And maybe that's true. But even in our research, it says that in the spring, the New York Times did an open letter begging him not to retire. So obviously it was an option that was already out there in the open. Right. And you know what? Maybe something did happen. Maybe he got some health news that wasn't great. Maybe, I don't know about his family life, but if he's married still or if his wife is living, but maybe his wife said, hey, I would like to actually spend some more time with you. Who knows? Like, there are a lot of reasons. He's married to Mary Davis since 1963. So maybe Mary said, you know what? I'm sick of this. You need to retire. We're going to Cabo. Who knows? Yeah. There are so many options that could have happened. And I know that it's really easy to be like, oh my God, Trump knows his son and his son lent him money and that must be it. Right. But that could be like nothing. I mean, it could be absolutely nothing. And there's nothing popping up since it happened to support that theory.
Right.
So I'm like 90% on this is done and over. Yeah. And we can move on from it and not have to share those memes or get into those like Reddit threads about it.
Right.
So
I think the one thing that I've really taken away from doing all this research was just, or at least one of the things I took away from this is just, listen, he knows what he's doing. Like, he's okay with this.
Right.
He's okay with he's not concerned about you screaming about him screwing America. He doesn't give a shit. So whatever it is that's going on in his life that has made him want to do this, he's not going to change his mind just because we have come up with a conspiracy theory or there is a conspiracy theory. Whatever this is, he is keeping very tight-lipped about it and just saying, I'm retiring and that's it.
Right.
He could have very easily come out and said, this has nothing to do with my son. He could have said, I'm having a health concern. My wife is having a health concern, or we just want to go drink margaritas on the beach, whatever it is.
Right.
He hasn't said, I don't think he's going to say. If he does, it's probably going to be some exclusive interview. And, we just have to take that as it is, I think, right now, because the honest to God truth is that he's made this decision. So what we have to do is we have to think about what we have to do next. So Beth, what can we do?
You have to vote in November.
Duh.
That is like,
guys, vote. Oh my God. If you're 18 and over, vote in every state. It matters in every single state. Your local votes matter.
Absolutely.
Everything matters. Stop acting like this one vote doesn't matter. Yeah. It does.
You have to vote. You have to make your voice heard, whether you're liberal or conservative. You need to go vote. And Democrats need to take back the House and the Senate because we need to block this until November and hopefully get a more moderate appointee onto the Supreme Court. It's not about getting a liberal. It's about getting a moderate. And we need the votes in the Senate to block anybody who's just way too conservative. So that's what I think we can do. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think calling your representatives and your senators now, whoever's there now, and tell them to do exactly what Mitch McConnell did. They set the fucking precedent. Let them know that Democrats need to dig in their heels and they need to do exactly what the GOP did for almost an entire year. We don't have an entire year. This is only a couple of months. Tell them, do not let any confirmation go through until after the November election. Mitch McConnell stood up in the Senate and he said, the people deserve to have a right to have their voice heard, and they held that Supreme Court seat open forever. We have just a few months. There's what? This is July, August, September, November. That's less than 4 months. They can hold this seat. They're not hearing any cases right now. That's exactly why he retired. They're done. So tell them, hold it. Hold it for 4 months. Fucking, if you need to shut down the government, this is the time.
This is something.
This is something that could change the course of American history. Like, don't forget, like, we're joking about it right now, but there's a there was just a case in a different state, and I don't remember where it is, but it was just on one of my local school Facebook forum feeds, where the judge ruled that kids don't have the right to learn in the classroom. They do not have to learn how to read or write in the classroom. That's decided by a judge. So if you think that those kind of educational rights are not going to go to the state Supreme Court and end up in the Supreme Court, you're wrong. Do you really want an illiterate taking care of you in your old age? Do you want someone who doesn't know how to read taking care of things for you and doing things around this country for you? That's not going to make America great. That's making America dumb. Right. And I don't want to live in a country full of dumb people. I want to live in a country where everyone has the right to education, no matter what. Right. And I'm willing to shut down the fucking government for that. Not to mention Roe versus Wade and gay marriage. I mean, fuck, their states are going to be rolling that back immediately.
Yeah.
Roe versus Wade and gay marriage are going to be the first things to go. And it pisses me off because we just got to a place in this country where some people were finally feeling safe.
Right.
And then 2016 happened.
So I wanted to pull up some other information because I thought to myself, Kelly, is this the first time there's been a conspiracy theory about a Supreme Court justice leaving the bench?
Say what?
And you know
Has there been more?
As a matter of fact, just a couple years ago, conspiracy theories swirl around the death of Anton Scalia. And this is in the Washington Post from February 15th, 2016. So basically, he died in a remote West Texas ranch. And there were questions right away about how his death was handled by local and federal authorities. This guy, William O. Ritchie, who was the former head of criminal investigations for the DC police, wrote in a post on Facebook, "As a former homicide commander, I am stunned that no autopsy was ordered for Justice Scalia." So he was found dead in his room. I guess he was had a pillow over his face, and the county judge pronounced him dead of natural causes without seeing the body, which is permissible under Texas law, and without ordering an autopsy, because basically there was no signs of foul play. And, he was like a 79-year-old guy with several chronic conditions that was completely unhealthy. And yeah, he died.
I mean, you could look at him and tell him he was unhealthy. Yeah. It's not like he was, I'm not trying to be flippant about someone's death, but sure. Justice Kennedy looks like he's in fairly good shape for an 81-year-old man. Anton Scalia did not look like he was taking very good care of himself. There was a lot of carbs in that diet.
Yeah, apparently his family insisted on not having an autopsy done. And so that has spawned a host of conspiracy theories online, which are still going on. So our favorite person, Alex Jones, InfoWars,
gross.
This post. This is so good. I feel like we need Will Sumner to help on this one. Report. Bill Clinton offered Lynch Anthony Scalia's seat during the tarmac meeting, QAnon. So this is saying that QAnon hints that WikiLeaks has tape and or transcript of the Clinton-Lynch tarmac meeting. And this was on February 6, 2018. So it says, Tuesday morning, QAnon dropped 2 posts that suggest their famous tarmac meeting. Former President Bill Clinton offered to then Attorney General Lynch the Supreme Court seat of murdered Anton Scalia in exchange for Lynch making sure that the FBI investigation into former Secretary Hillary Clinton's email server be stopped, exonerating Clinton of any criminal charges.
So seriously, the only thing that worries me about this article is that Trump or his staff is going to read it and get fucking ideas.
Oh,
okay?
Totally.
Because right now, all I can think is that he is definitely making exchanges in case this Mueller investigation makes it to the Supreme Court.
So Scalia was murdered, is suggested by the initials AS, standing for Anton Scalia, and the number 187, which the Urban Dictionary associates with murder, death, and kill. So apparently the post that QAnon writes said SC/LL deal AS 187. Get it? Do you see it? You got it, right?
I mean, I know that QAnon is like the best source.
Totally, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure WikiLeaks has announced this somewhere and they have released the tapes, right? Mm-hmm. Sure, right?
Yeah.
They've done that.
Yeah, this is some crazy ass shit. Thanks, InfoWars. And this was just posted this year. I mean, it was back in February, but like literally 2 years after the guy died, we still are seeing posts about conspiracy theories that he was murdered and that his seat was offered. I mean, it's just crazy. I cannot believe that this guy that InfoWars is as popular as it is, because if you read this and you don't think that's fucking crazy, I'm sorry. No, you are not critically thinking.
And the craziest part about all of this is that they're still harping on about something that didn't happen. This is the way always with InfoWars and conspiracy theorists on the right. They're always like, oh, Hillary Clinton did this and Comey did this so that Trump wouldn't be elected. But he was elected, you fucking jackasses. And Hillary Clinton didn't appoint anyone to the Supreme Court, you jackasses. Like, this might be a conversation if she were president right now.
Right, exactly.
But the fact that she's not, and they're still harping on about her, like they won't just let her enjoy life in the woods or whatever it is she's doing. Right. She is just like retirement in the forest, whatever she's doing, they're not letting. And, you know, I will also say the second greatest thing about this article is how many fucking ads there are for his supplements on the side of this page. I mean, it's crazy. There's 1, 2.
I'm going to give me some brain fort.
3. Yeah. What the fuck?
Yeah.
I mean, that's seriously, funny. That is, I didn't realize that he did supplements until just this year.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That John Oliver expose on it was really good.
Yeah.
So they aren't stopping there. We have an article from today, July 3rd. Progressives scramble to block potential Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett because she is a committed Christian.
For God's sake.
Okay. So it says there's a lot of buzz that Amy Coney Barrett is going to be President Trump's nominee for the Supreme Court, and that is causing many progressives to totally freak out. That is a medical term.
We're freaking out, guys. You know what? I've never heard this woman's name before. And I'm pretty liberal and I don't give a shit about her.
So it says the reason that they're freaking out doesn't have anything to do with her credentials. In fact, as you will see below, Barrett is exceptionally qualified to be on the Supreme Court. She is sharp, intelligent, and has a sterling reputation. But the left is already throwing a massive temper tantrum, even though she isn't the nominee yet, for one simple reason. Amy Coney Barrett is a committed Christian, and progressives are deathly afraid that her Christian values will influence her decisions on social issues. Have you seen the Supreme Court? Do you think any of them are not Christian?
Yeah, no. I mean,
what are we looking at here? And check, but what do you think the chances are that any of them are even not churchgoers? Like, are you serious? Like, what uproar would there be if we had a Muslim on the Supreme Court, or God forbid, a Protestant?
Well, they're mostly Protestants. No, I will give them that. I would bet that the majority. I bet Kennedy is a Catholic. I mean, I'm just taking that off the top of my head because his fucking name is Kennedy. So I'm going to guess that he's a Catholic. I bet the rest of them are all. Maybe Sotomayor might be Catholic, but I bet most of them are Protestant.
Yeah.
But I mean, imagine having imagine having an atheist.
Right.
Someone who just believed in the law and didn't let religion into the matter at all. Imagine how great that might be. Like, I'm not just preaching for atheism's sake. I don't care. But, I just imagine someone who literally had no religion to be like, oh, I'm going to fall back on this. And this is where I get my core beliefs from. And I'm going to believe that a clump of cells is a baby and deserves all kinds of rights. But if a juvenile is on death row, fuck him.
Right.
I guess that's where they go with it because they love death row.
And that is where I am deathly afraid that the Christian values will influence the Supreme Court's decision on social issues.
Yeah.
But yeah. So then it goes on to make this a cherry of a statement. We all know that President Trump likes to make history. And it is being reported that nominating the first conservative woman to the Supreme Court is something that intrigues him. Alex, I'll take Sandra O'Day for 1,000, please. The first woman on the Supreme Court appointed by Ronald Reagan, who before she was appointed was an elected official and judge in Arizona, serving as the first female majority leader of the state Senate as the Republican leader in the Arizona Senate. She sounds liberal.
She does sound kind of liberal. I wonder where she ranks.
Oh, right. If we look at that infographic from 538, oh, that's right. She was more conservative than retiring Anthony Kennedy.
Yep.
So
and on both sides, all cases, she was like 60%.
Yeah. So explain to me how Trump would be nominating the first conservative woman to the Supreme Court.
Listen,
did they think that Sandra O'Day wasn't a woman?
They don't understand logic. They don't understand. Listen, she voted for women once, and that makes her a liberal. She's a dirty liberal. You don't want anybody who will vote with a woman. I mean, you want to make sure that white men stay in charge at all times, Beth. Don't you know that? That is the true aim of the conservative white man.
You know, Sandra Day O'Connor was on the Supreme Court when I was growing up, and I have fond memories of her being the first woman on the court.
Oh,
and
for real? Me too.
I think that was great. And if we had to have a conservative woman to get the ball rolling, then so be it, you know? But if Trump nominates this woman, which I think would be great, you know what? I would take a woman, I would take a woman conservative over a male conservative any day of the week, just because I feel like
I'm with you.
There's the chance that they're going to be a little bit more level-headed about some of these issues, but
I don't know. I
that
go back
doesn't mean that that's true, and it is a stereotype, right? So
yeah,
that's just my okay, if we have to have the worst of the worst, at least make it a woman, I guess.
There's a part of me that's like, oh, well, you know, women, we're more empathetic, we're more likely to try to see both sides,
right? And
then I look at it and I think, nope, Kellyanne Conway is a woman. I mean, possibly. Ann Coulter is supposedly a woman.
Kelly, you are pouring lava all over me. It's pouring,
sorry.
Kelly.
I'm so sorry. I'm
pouring lava all over my heart.
I am so sorry. I don't want them to be women. I mean, I'd gladly give them back. I mean, I have no evidence for sure that they're women. I mean,
they are.
They're both so deathly skinny. I mean, they're just gross.
Right.
And Tommy Lahren is right behind Ann Coulter with her little knife, just being like, just give me a chance. Just give me a chance.
Oh, she's great. Love her.
One day she'll be as skinny as Ann Coulter, and she too can take over the role of death.
So, Kelly, I think you wanted to take us out on something before we do our spread jam.
I do. So I saw something so funny today, and I felt like we all kind of needed a laugh. So Trump tweeted today that after having written many best-selling books, you don't see me, but I am shaking my head. Because we all know he didn't write those goddamn books. After having written many best-selling books and somewhat priding myself on my ability to write, it should be noted that the fake news constantly likes to pour over my tweets looking for a mistake. I capitalize certain words only for emphasis, not because they should be capitalized. So, of course, in this tweet, he misspelled poor. Or he didn't misspell it. I should rephrase that. He did not misspell it. He used the wrong version of the word poor, which is great.
Which version
on so many
did
levels.
He use?
He used POUR, which obviously J.K. Rowling, who is one of my favorite Twitter trolls for Trump, has she spent 3 entire tweets doing nothing but laughing at him, which is great. But my personal favorite is Merriam-Webster, who explained that to pore over, P-O-R-E, is to read or study very carefully. To pour over, P-O-U-R, over, is to make expensive coffee, which is very common here in Oregon. Right. You would get a pour over. And then they also defined comb over, which is to comb hair from one side of the head to cover the bald spot.
So wait, tell me Trump's sentence again where he says they pour over. What does he say?
He says it should be noted that the fake news constantly likes to pour over my tweets looking for a mistake.
Kelly, that was an admission. The P-tapes are real. He meant pouring in the literal sense.
No, please don't. No, I can't. I can't.
It's true.
I can't. Oh God, he's so
over
great.
His tweets. He prints out his tweets and has the prostitutes pee on him. That's exactly. He did not misspell it. Kelly, he does not make mistakes.
I'm so sad right now.
He did not misspell
it. I wanted to leave on this really funny.
You know I'm right.
Oh God. I don't want it to be true.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about your jam of the week?
I believe it is my turn to go first.
Yeah, I think so.
So my jam of the week is Nothing Else by Angus and Julia Stone. And I've done a track by them before, but I just found this song not too long ago. And I tend to get obsessed with songs. Like, I'll listen to them like over and over again while I'm a little bit obsessed with them. And this is definitely my current obsession. I pulled an article from The Heights, which is actually an independent student newspaper of Boston College. Anyway, they did a review of their album Snow, which this song is on. And this is what they said about it. Nothing else. Arguably the best track on the album is Simply Beautiful. Instrumentally, the song consists of a simple acoustic strumming with the beat of kept on the dampening strings. That sentence is a little weird. It says, the song feels like a dirty desert town at sunset, which I totally agree with. And you're about to stay for a night. And as Julia sings the main verses of the song, Angus interjects at various points to add unison or vocals to the already enticing lyrics. And in contrast to the other pedestrian love lyrics, the song seems acutely inspired. And one of the opening lines is, you don't want to be rich like everybody else does. You just want to grow old, sit still while everybody else runs. In the meantime, tell me your star sign. I'll make something up about how you have to fall apart to really be someone. And the main lyrics of the song are like, I like you just the way you are. And just keep saying that like over and over again. It has these like really cool lyrics. And it's like, I like you just the way you are. I'm not going to try to sing it because I will murder it. But it is, I just really like it. So go check it out.
It sounds great. I'm going to go check it out. I like the idea of a dirty desert town at sunset. Gosh, I wish I had known about your jam of the week.
I sent it to you.
Oh, I know. I know you did. And I wish I had listened to it. I am terrible. I do listen to them. I just, I don't always listen to them right when you send them. And I really wish I had for this one, because I think my jam of the week, well, who cares? I'm going to change it anyway. So I had thought about doing something that was sweet and whatever, because we had such a bad week and I had reread this book series, and I don't normally do that. But you know what? Since we're going to go with the Dirty Desert Town at Sunset, I'll talk about the book that I just read, which I probably shouldn't have done on one of the worst weeks in political history, even though it doesn't cover politics. But one of my favorite writers is Cormac McCarthy. And I really love him. Not a lot of people love him the way that I do, but he has been called one of the greatest American writers. And this past week, I listened to Outer Dark, which is this very weird and very Cormac McCarthy book about, it's similar in some ways to The Road, but also Blood Meridian, where it's the story of a brother and sister who are off searching for kind of the same thing. He's searching for her. She's searching for her child. It's revealed later, and it's not a big reveal. You kind of know from the beginning that it's her brother's child.
Okay.
And it's the story of them she's searching for the child. He's searching for her. He left the child out in the woods to just die.
Oh.
And she realizes that someone took off with the child. She never got to hold it. And she's going through all these emotions as a brand new mother where she just kind of really just wants her child back. And it's not an incredibly satisfying story. None of his stories are really all that satisfying in the end, but it's the journey. It's the journey that's worth the book. It's always the journey in all of his books. And it's really worth the ride. There's always sort of this personification of evil that's in his stories that kind of lurks in the sidelines. And in some books, it's actually a character, but in this book, it's like a group of 3 men that are also traveling, and you can't really tell if they're like the personification of the devil and they're following him, but they don't necessarily do anything to him in the very beginning. So he does intersect with them in a way that no one else is able to. Whenever they intersect with anybody else, they kill those people.
Okay.
So when he runs into them, they don't do that to him. And that's the only time you ever get to hear them speak. And I don't know, the idea of a dirty desert town at sunset really brought that back to my mind of just, it wasn't a book I necessarily wanted to read when I was reading it.
Yeah.
But the way he writes is so beautiful. And it really takes you to the place that he's writing from. So even when it's really confusing, even when you're like, what the fuck? I don't want to read this particular scene because it's just breaking my heart. You still just keep going because it's like having a cold sore in your mouth and you just keep touching it with your tongue.
I was thinking it kind of sounds like now with Trump, like it's terrible and you don't want this to happen, but all of the activism and everybody who's risen up and has said, this isn't okay, and I'm going to take control, and I'm going to be active in my community, and I'm going to run for office, and the 25,000 women that are running for elections this cycle.
And all the people who've won since 2016 when Trump won, all the people who've won that were not expected to. People winning in red districts, people winning against, Alexandra.
Yeah, that just won.
Yes, the socialist Democrat from New York. I mean, that's amazing. She won against incumbent.
Yeah, he was set to be the next majority leader, basically. Yeah, that's what I read. Doug Jones I think that's in Alabama. I mean, there has been some really great things that have come out of the unfortunateness of Trump. And, I wish that we hadn't had to go that far in order to do it. But I'm in that group too. And I'm looking at, these coming up elections, like, I don't want to sit on the sidelines anymore. And let other people do it for me. I need to get out there and really volunteer for a campaign or go knock on some doors. And it's scary, but I can't not do it this year. So
yeah. And again, this keeps coming back, go vote in your local elections.
Absolutely.
Like Stacey Abrams in Georgia is set to be the first female African-American governor.
Yes.
Which, that if we're going to keep any of our rights, if he gets a Supreme Court nominee and they get pushed forward and they're in there and they're conservative, the best way we can fight against that is in our local elections. Right. Because if they keep pushing back and making all these things states' rights, states will start rolling these back. So if you have people in office who will not roll those things back, your state will be safer.
Right. And they say starting at the local level, like running for your school board, running for a commissioner seat, running for anything at local level can be more impactful than being in Congress or in Senate. So, and it builds your bench. So, maybe you run and you become a commissioner and that's your first experience in a political foray. And then you've got some experience to move up to maybe being a state congressman or a state senate or running for a mayor or those kind of things. So it's just about building that bench too, getting that experience in to be able to run for that little bit higher office and then keep going from there. So yeah. And anybody can do anything. So get out there, knock on some doors, make some phone calls. There's so many ways now that you can get involved, even from your home, and even just signing up for those apps where you can text or, go to Swing Left and sign up to help there, or Emily's List, or anything that you can do.
Go to ResistBot.
Yeah.
If you are just so terrified of talking to anyone or even talking on the phone, go download or go text ResistBot, and they will automatically fax and email your senators, your representatives, whoever you ask them to. But, just always remember, like, if you have sheriffs that are voted on,
DAs.
Vote for sheriffs. Yeah. Vote for your DA. Vote for everyone you can vote for. Yes. And look them up. See what their records are. Be more involved with that. Yeah. And because it all makes a difference to someone.
And don't share fake news.
Don't share fake news.
Yeah. Keep that misinformation down. Keep it solid. Keep it real, and get out there. All right, guys, we are going to be back in 2 weeks. And until then, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook at Podcast Fake News. You can email us anything at podcastfakenews@gmail.com, including telling me how many things I mispronounced today. I don't care. Send me an email about it. I love it. Head on over to our Patreon page and slap us $1 a month. Be a jelly of the pod for us. And
check out our blog, right?
Yeah.
Check out our blog at podcastfakenews.com, because we have all of this information plus all of our links. All of this will be on there. The infographics will be on there.
Yeah.
I've been making some infographics. I made some for the last blog post. So if you missed something that we talked about, all that information is on the webpage.
Yeah. And you can there's a little button right there where you can just click to share it on Facebook or Twitter if you want. So share away. So, hey guys, until next time, spread jam.
Not lies.